I think for me, you started at South Carolina, eager to, they brought in a lot of new players, similar to what Georgia and some others have done. It's a new roster. Last year did not go the way that the home folks wanted it to. Uh, from your look, I know it's just one day, but what did you see from South Carolina? Who caught your eye? What do you feel of the overall vibe and talent level heading into the spring?
It's a low bar to clear, but I come away feeling pretty confident that the pitching is going to be better. I mean, that was their big issue last year. Was it felt like every weekend was just a total roll of the dice, and occasionally Jake McCoy would have a big
Yeah.
game, and Brandon Stone, threw a complete game against Ole Miss, but then in a following start would throw like 3 innings, right? And
Oh,
so it was just tough week to week to know what to expect from South Carolina. And actually, I guess I should say just it was usually poor performance. So we kind of didn't know
mhm.
what to expect, but there'd be these little
Well,
pops and
you didn't
flashes.
like it, right? Yeah.
Right. So I do feel pretty confident about that. And again, it's a low bar to clear, but I say that because, I saw them against College of Charleston, which is they won 37 games last
Mhm.
year. I think folks who follow college baseball know that's a quality program. And in 9 innings, South Carolina held them to 1 run on 3 hits. And the
Oh
one
wow.
run was in the ninth inning. And it was,
Mhm.
I guess all runs in fall games are kind of garbage time, but
Yeah.
that's kind of how it felt, right? It was just,
Mhm.
eh, no
Mhm.
big deal. And against Charlotte, they held Charlotte to 2 runs in the first 11 innings. Now, Charlotte put up a 4 spot in the 12th.
Mhm.
So they had 6 total runs, but it was only 2 runs after 11 innings. So and I saw Charlotte this fall. I wrote their fall report. I like that lineup.
Yeah.
So that speaks pretty highly of it. Now, the question is it just depth or is there like high end quality here? Because I do
Mhm.
think the depth is certainly better. I'm writing the South Carolina fall report as we speak, and I'm just writing about a lot of different guys, and so
Mhm.
I do think the depth is a lot better there. But the question for me is going to be, is there high end quality? And there are a couple of
Yeah.
options of guys who could bring that. One is the aforementioned Jake McCoy,
Yeah.
where I give him a lot of credit for last year. Like there were games where he just kind of got beat up and he just wore it. And he went
Mhm.
out there every week. He started 14 times. He took the ball every weekend, and his ERA was almost 7. And that's a tough thing to deal with mentally, going out there and just knowing that there's a pretty decent chance that the score line is not going to be in your favor.
Mhm.
And he just battled through it. And then he went out to the Cape and he dominated in the first month of the Cape season. And I'm excited to see what he brings back to the spring. He's not going to be the guy he was in the Cape. His ERA was 1.5 and he struck out 25 and something like 12 and a third innings. Like
Yeah.
he's not going to dominate like that in the SEC, but can he be somewhere between what he was last year and what he was over the summer? And if he is, then he's a very
Yeah.
credible weekend guy for them. The other guy worth mentioning is Riley Goodman, who was arguably the most highly regarded recruit in the class that arrived last fall, but he had Tommy John
Mhm.
and missed all of last season. He's back now, healthy. He touched 99 when I saw him against Charleston, and apparently he's been dominant all fall. He struggled a little bit with his command against Charleston. He got himself into a jam and then got out of it. And Palmineri was pretty clear in post game that, hey, that's the first time he's really been in a jam all fall.
Hmm.
So that's obviously exciting because that's an arm talent that you
Yeah.
just can't you can't really teach 99. And so
Mhm.
I think there's a lot of excitement there. And I'd urge people, by the time you listen to this, the fall report will be coming in the pretty quickly. So I just urge folks to read that as opposed to going line by line on the pitching staff. But suffice it to say, I liked what I saw there.
Yeah.
Um, Go ahead.
Yeah. And then obviously if Goodman continues to, I guess, evolve into what he could be, and we feel like he will, it just how long will it take? Will it be this year, next year, whenever? And then with McCoy, I mean, it's there. If those two guys meet, or exceed expectations, they can have that 1-2 punch that keeps them in games, right? And they're able to maybe not have to score, 8 runs to win. Speaking of that, what do you see offensively? Lost some really good players But they certainly have a lot of volume coming in. What did you see there? Who are going to be the players to watch from a lineup perspective?
Yeah, this side of things I'm less sure about. I'm less sure of what I think on this side
Mm-hmm.
because on the one hand, I like a lot of the transfers they brought in. It's a lot of guys who had really good careers at mid majors or similar types of programs. It's
Yeah.
Ethan Lizama from Western Kentucky. It's Tyler Bach from Wofford. It's Logan Sutter from Purdue. Luke Uhas from Louisiana. All guys that are and that's not the entire list. That's just off the top of my head. Like it's a lot of really proven guys. And so when I went to go see them, I kind of had in my head that I was going to like the lineup more than what I did last year. But then I got to talking to some folks there at the game, and we were just kind of, just as you do in the press box, just kind of,
Mm-hmm.
shooting the bull. And I don't think at the time I was giving enough weight to the fact that South Carolina lost Ethan Petrie, who was one of the best, flatly one of the best power hitters in South Carolina baseball history.
Yeah.
Now, disappointing last year with the injuries, and he just didn't produce, maybe a little bit of pressing, and he was the clear centerpiece of the lineup, and a lot of things I think came together to make it to where his 2025 season was not what he would have wanted, but still was a second round pick and obviously had a lot of success. You lose Nathan Hall, who was their catalyst offensively, and you lose Henry Kazmar, who went back to Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
So do all of the guys coming in counterbalance that? Is it a push? Are they better? I really don't know, but I will say it's pretty clear who they're going to be leaning heavily on. I think KJ Scobie is named number one.
Yeah.
Third baseman last year. He's moving to shortstop. He played a great shortstop against Charleston. Maybe the range is not, he's not going to be Justin LeBron at shortstop, but can he be Colby Shelton? I think he can be. And Colby Shelton, as much as we maybe doubted that at one point, turned himself into a fine college shortstop. And so I think that's one guy. Bo Hollins, lefty hitter, first baseman, hit over 300 last year. He's going to be a big part of it. And then after that, it's like, pick your transfers you like the most is really what it comes down to. One position I will say, though, that I do have a little bit of worry about is catcher. In a perfect world, Talmadge LeCroy is catching every day again. He's back. There were concerns about that last year, and then he got injured and only played 17 games. So we never really got to see like the final result of that, if all the worry was justified. Right. But behind him, it's, Gavin Brayland, who's dealt with an injury this fall, and he caught a lot last year, but just really wasn't effective offensively. You've got Jake Randolph, who is a transfer from Presbyterian, who hitter for average, not a ton of pop, but experienced. And the best of the group, at least offensively, is Reese Moore from Iowa. But the issue is that he hasn't caught much. And so he's a bat first catcher. And in the SEC, with the kind of athletes you have, you have to have a catcher who can help control the running game. You just do. And I don't know that any of those guys are that guy. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm certainly not a catching expert. That's a difficult position to evaluate, even for people who do that for a living. But I do come away a little bit worried, not just because of the players involved, but the injuries too. I mean, they've had Reese Moore and Gavin Brayland have been out for a large part of this fall, and they say that it's not going to hold them back for the spring, but it's also not ideal that you didn't have a fall ramp up, right? So now the spring kind of becomes your fall, where you're knocking off a whole bunch of rust in January. And is there enough lead time to get you in midseason form by the time the season starts? I guess we'll see. But they're going to have some questions to answer there for sure.
Yeah. So from what I'm hearing from you, from what others have told me, sounds like we feel like South Carolina will be better. We're just not quite sure how much, right? Because they won 5 conference games last year, 6 conference games, something like that.
Yes,
they're going to win more, but the question is, will they win enough to get in that regional mix? And that's to be determined.
Yeah, and that's the reality of where they're at. Like, I think South Carolina fans aren't going to like to hear that's where your team is, but I think it's the reality. Is just that right now, until we find out otherwise, and maybe we will, but until we find out otherwise, they're team 15 probably right now. I mean, and there's always one team that just gets totally racked with injuries. And, maybe they don't finish 15th in part because some other team just tumbles down the standings, but
Mhm.
we can't predict that, obviously. But so I'm with you. They'll be better. I think that's where I come down. I like this group on balance better, but I have to admit, now that I've given it some more thought and really sat with it to write the fall report, I don't know that I like them as much more as what's the way I want to say that. I don't think I like them by more as much as I thought I might when
Yeah,
I saw them, because I just started to think about the guys they've lost, and I was kind of maybe underestimating some of those pieces they lost, because it's easy to underestimate when they came off a team that won 6 league games, right?
sure. Right.
But the
Right.
reality is they did lose some good players, so we'll see. But certainly, um, certainly the South Carolina faithful looking to cling to anything, that could be positive momentum there with that program. So, um,
Well, and to play devil's advocate, there's
sure,
so many new players that we don't. It's so hard to get a gauge on what they're going to look like, because some of those guys may actually catch fire and be better in the spring than they were in the fall once they get acclimated, once all that kind of jazz. So it's to be determined, but it's certainly not something where in the SEC that they're going to burst to the top of the standings.